Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to our second session of our series on the best kept secrets in religion. Are all of you good at keeping secrets? No? Oh, come on now. Let's begin with the greatest secret of all, which is our being gifted with the gift of prayer. We begin realizing who we are. We're connected, we're united. And so we pray not just by ourselves, but together in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving and gracious God, we come before you with hunger, with thirst for that kind of growth in your love and your spirit that transforms us. Help my words not get in the way of your truth. Help us to search together for that which is real. We pray this in the name and in the power of Jesus, your Son and our brother, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, well, welcome. It's so good to have you all here. Let's just go around and give your names, and if you want to give where you're from, that's fine. Start here with
Karen. My name is Karen Price, and I'm a friend of Mary. She has brought me to some of the classes here, and it's been very interesting.
welcome.
I'm Mary Masters.
Okay, man.
I'm Joni Novinsky, Lutheran.
Oh, this is our year together, right? The 500.
Margaret from Jenison, and I'm a Methodist.
Oh, right. Thank goodness.
Melissa from Hudsonville. I'm Margaret's sister, and she suggested that we might want to come tonight, and we're Methodists also.
Okay, great to have y'all, really.
I'm her other half.
All right, you're probably a Methodist too, right?
Depends on the day.
All right.
Sorry, I'm Diane, and I was raised Methodist.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm Kurt Fedor from Portland.
Okay.
I'm John Klein, St. Stephen's Church.
Marge Kozkowski. I come to a lot of the information center classes.
Okay. Marge and I go way back to the 70s. Yes.
I'm Ray Ferris. I was actually raised Lutheran, well, Baptist, then Lutheran, and now I'm kind of uncommitted, I guess.
Okay, all right.
Annette Whitty.
Joe,
All right.
I'm with her.
Okay,
Shirley Wickering, and I'm Catholic.
all right.
Maggie Nicholson.
Okay. And I'm Joachim Lally. I'm a Paulist, okay. Don't be a Paul, but I'm a Paulist, all right? So it's okay. It's okay to be a Paulist. Okay. So tonight we want to look at some of the ultimate questions. We started last month with the questions of pain and suffering and how that relates to our spiritual lives, how it relates to judgment. And so tonight we go even deeper and we go into the idea of what happens after death, okay? So, I'd just like to start with a story, and this is from Sister Joan Chittister's book, 40 Stories to Stir the Soul. Once upon a time, there was a student who was with the teacher for many years. When the teacher felt she was going to die, she wanted to make even her death a lesson. That night, the teacher took a torch, called her student, and set out with her through the forest. Soon they reached the middle of the woods, where the teacher extinguished the torch without explanation. "What's the matter?" asked the student. "The torch has gone out," the teacher answered, and just walked on. "But," shouted the student, her voice plucking with fear, "will you leave me here in the dark?" "No, I will not leave you in the dark," returned the teacher's voice from the surrounding blackness. "I will leave you searching for the light." And that's what we're doing tonight, searching for the light, searching for the truth that will set us free. Okay? So, The ultimate questions, what is life, what happens after death? What's life? The most fundamental questions. Anybody have any choice about being born? Did you vote on it? Okay, where, in what country, or which parents, in which religion, Methodist, Lutheran, Catholic, you know? Did you choose before birth? Did you have options A, B, and C, you know? Was it by luck or by blessing? Big distinctions. A lot of people speak, oh, I was just lucky, I was born Methodist or whatever, you know. No, it's not luck, it's blessing. Luck is what people say when they don't know what else to say. They don't have any reason for it, they don't have anyone to give credit to or blame. They just say the word luck. I've had bishops say to me, okay, Joachim, good luck. I'm thinking, what? How about, may God bless you? How about that? I'd rather hear that, right? Would you? All right. Why were we created? Do we think that God had a specific purpose in mind when creating us? Do we ever strive to become aware of what our special contribution to created life might be? Anybody want to venture something? Why do you think you were created? Just to fill a space, you know?
I know I was created. My mother told me that I was created to keep my brother company.
There you go. All right. Okay. Are you still doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've heard that we were born to keep God company, that he didn't want to be alone in this world.
Okay. All right.
And I had heard that it's to learn lessons.
All right. Term lessons.
The first question of the Baltimore Catechism
Yeah. You remember that?
addresses this. It's,
Why did God make you? Right?
Yeah.
What is it? You remember?
To know, love, and serve God and to be happy with Him forever.
All right. Okay. That says a lot. To know, love, and serve God, right? And to be happy. Okay. We're called to happiness. All right. Okay. We're going to be dividing some of these questions up into groups, but we're just going through a little bit. When were we created? This is an interesting question because some of us think, well, you know, I was created like myself December 12th, 1939, all right? And but according to Meister Eckhart, he says that there's a part of us, a spark in the soul that was never created. I mean, never not created. It was, he says, I have occasionally spoken about a light in the soul that is uncreated and uncreatable. This light I frequently treat in my preaching, and this very light grasps God without mediation or coverings, but naked as God in himself. That is, it grasps God as the efficaciousness of inner birthing. Now, Meister Eckhart is probably the deepest mystic you'll ever want to read, or not read. It's introducing this is one book, there's lots of them out. This is Introducing Meister Eckhart by Michael Dimkovich, a Dominican. But he really goes into some deep stuff. And he has this treatise that he's known for. It's called How to Live Without a Why. How to live without a why. Why do you think that might be important? How to live without a why. Anybody ever ask why? Ask 2-year-olds. What's the only thing they ever say? Why? Time to go to bed. Why? Time to eat. Why?
Well, maybe live with intention.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, it's the trust in God for everything. You don't have all life.
Okay.
Does that mean then that this inner light of our being has been forever, just as God has been forever, and he just captures it and puts it in a body?
Yeah, at a certain point, we are created with the body, right? But Meister Eckhart would say that there's a spark in the soul, a light, whatever you want to call it, all metaphorical, that has been forever and never was created.
Is that synonymous with the Holy Spirit inside of us?
Well, I think you could call it that. I don't remember him saying that, but that makes sense to me.
Would that speak to reincarnation?
No. So it's very different, reincarnation. Reincarnation, I'll get into it in a little bit.
So would we be spiritual beings?
Well, you could say that. I mean, you make a dichotomy there between the dualism, the body and the spirit. We are a being, and we all came to a physical existence at a certain time in history. All right, some before others, okay? I won't mention any names here. So, but let me get into this, some of the mystical ramifications.
Yeah, Father?
Pardon?
I had a comment.
Yeah.
Many years ago, thank God, I had cancer, and I always wanted to have some kind of amazing experience like I've read
In a
about.
way that he was not himself an
Oh,
observant
excuse
Jew.
me,
And ancient Jewish sources.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, well, of
I was
course.
trying to turn off my phone so it wouldn't ring while you were talking.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, good. All right.
Anyway, I thought maybe because I was going through this trauma and so forth, I would be blessed with some great inspiration or something, like I've heard people that, you know, their lives were changed. And that didn't exactly happen the way I had hoped. But one day, I went outside and all of a sudden everything just looked incredibly beautiful, and there was this sense of, I don't want to die before I fulfilled my purpose. But I don't know what my purpose is. And then over the years, as I've mulled over that, I finally came to a place of peace, which is, I will fulfill my purpose. I may never know what it is.
Okay.
But
And we don't have to know.
we don't
okay?
have to know.
But you brought that up, flashed before my mind, what happened last week in Las Vegas, and all these 59, I don't know how many now, but at least one time it was 59 people who were killed. All of a sudden, you know, they're face to face with all of reality, all of consciousness, and they were not planning for it. It was just instant, you know. And so they didn't have a chance to talk about, well, how do I feel about dying, or, you know, it just suddenly was like a thief in the night. It came in and took away their life. And so many people are talking about the tragedy of that. And it is a tragedy, it's no question about it. But at the same time, it's not the ultimate of tragedies. Because the ultimate of tragedies is not to realize who we are and where we will be for all eternity. In other words, it's a broader vision than that. Not to make light of that horrible thing, but death for the one who is in touch with the truest of all realities is not the end. So we're going to be getting into that a little bit, okay? But definition mystical. Mystical is that which goes beyond the belonging system and the creedal system. Beyond who you belong to, what church you belong to, what doctrines you belong to, and your system of beliefs. See, a lot of times we define ourselves, well, I'm Methodist, I'm Catholic, I'm Lutheran, you know, and I've got these beliefs and not these, and so forth. That's a very narrow definition of who you are. And other people think, well, I can just go over to the pearly gates and say, well, I was a Catholic, so, just where's my reserved seat, that kind of stuff, I have a funny thing I read here. Said, it seems 3 Irishmen, Sean, Michael, and Tim, passed over at the same time. Upon encountering the pearly gates, they were met by St. Patrick himself, and he addressed the boys thusly, lads, I'm here to welcome you to heaven, where you will spend eternity. Just remember one thing. When you go through these gates, don't step on any of the ducks, or you'll be punished for eternity. Sean went in first and was amazed to see that the entire landscape was encompassed by ducks. And try as he might, sure enough, he stepped on one. He was immediately joined by one of the homeliest colleens he'd ever laid eyes on. And she said, well, love, you stepped on a duck, and now we're together for all time. And of course, the exact same thing happened to Michael, only his companion was even the worse for the wear. By this time, Tim was absolutely terrified. He genuinely managed to make it most of the way across the court without stepping on a single duck. Suddenly his arm was taken by a young lass. Tim looked over it and beheld the most beautiful, graceful, blue-eyed, gorgeous woman he'd ever seen in his whole life. He gasped, I don't understand. The young beauty answered, well, I'm sure I don't either. I was walking around minding my own business when all of a sudden I stepped on a duck. So there you go. All right. Watch where you step, right? Okay. So, this mystical ramification, and Meister Eckhart is the mystic of mystics, it goes into this idea of going beyond the belonging and your belief system. And your belonging in your family, nation, religion, race, gender. Your creedal, what's your belief system? Do you memorize? Do you question? We get in a lot of fights over the different creedal statements, right? Just like look at the whole thing with Martin Luther, that we're celebrating 500 years now since that particular point in time where he rebelled and put out his declarations, and a lot of things was all upset. Everything's changed. Everything looks back to 500 years. Okay, belief systems. Wow, they're very important. All right. So that's kind of the mystical ramification. Emotional ramifications. Supposing this is true, that we have a spark in our soul that it was never created, all right? Could that explain why we're homesick for God? There's something within us that's hungry for God, thirsting for God, completely happy. Are we ever completely satisfied? No. Anybody just so completely satisfied you couldn't take any more? Just hold up your hand,
Depends on the moment.
Well, will that moment last? That's a question. It's this idea that nothing really completely satisfies us. And I cannot help but think that the reason is that we have experienced complete satisfaction, complete happiness, and complete joy even before we were born. And there's something within us that is not satisfied until that is realized again.
God thirsting for God.
God within us thirsting for God. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so in order to kind of mitigate this sort of emptiness that we feel, we look to be in relation, connected, wanted, loved. It's just all of us have this innate kind of hunger for relationship. And I think we can define all of theology in terms of relationship. Our relationship with God, our relationship with each other, our relationship with the universe. It's all about relationship. Okay. Diminishment. Anybody feeling at times you're a little bit diminished? You know, that, maybe you're not quite what you used to be when you were 15. Anybody have that feeling once in a while? When you climb stairs or get out of cars or whatever it is, I always feel it when I get out of cars. I'm thinking, what happened to my body? It's changed. I used to get out so quickly, and now it's like, I've got to make sure my foot's on the ground solid before I my God, what happened to this young Joachim? All right. So, how do you feel when someone says, "Hey, are you happy?" Don't you just love that question? I hate it. Are you happy yet? How do you respond? How do you respond if somebody asks you, "Are you happy yet?" What do you say?
Yes,
Yes.
how about you?
I was until you came up here and asked me that question.
For the most part, yeah.
It's all such a relative term.
It is a relative term.
Oh my gosh, what does it mean? When are you happy? It's like, happy is the kind of word that it's like, it doesn't allow for many gradations.
Yeah.
It's almost like, are you pregnant? It's either or, And,
No,
and,
I say no.
no, you say. So it's this idea of, it's not a good question. It's almost on the same par as the people that come up and ask, "Are you saved?" I don't know which one I like least, but less. But okay. Pain and suffering. I asked Kelly. I don't know if you have any of those copies from last month or not.
I can get some.
Okay, if we could, because some people were here who were not here last month, and we had a whole conference on pain and suffering. Just to give you one gist of it, and that was an important part of it, was I distinguished pain and suffering in the sense that pain is the distress we feel, either physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, and suffering is what happens when we judge that pain in terms of, well, I shouldn't have this headache, I shouldn't be unhappy now, I shouldn't be crippled, or whatever it is. It's judging the pain that increases it so much that we can now call it suffering. And I think this makes a lot of sense. For instance, in this particular typology, animals don't have suffering because they can't reflect on the pain. They can't judge it or evaluate it. It just is, and therefore it's not as difficult for animals as it is for us. You see dogs walking around with 3 legs, and they seem to be very content. They're not thinking, well, I don't have 4 legs like everybody else. Why not? What did I do wrong? Well, how did I deserve this? No.
It's not fair.
Huh?
It's not fair.
It's not fair. Yeah, right. But you see, I think that's one reason why animals we're so attracted to them, because they're not judging. They're not thinking, well, if I just had a better owner, I'd be happy, The difference is striking. Okay, we'll give you those handouts so you can look at those later. Do we have a call from God to living in what is at every moment, to living in the present moment? If we don't, we're experiencing more and more the sense of diminishment. How does your body and mind react to the diminishment? We all are familiar, I think, with the 5 stages of dying, according to Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Do these resonate with you?
Does that equate diminishment with death?
Diminishment is the gradual slippery slope down to that moment, yeah.
It could be cyclical too, within the, you know,
Yeah, okay.
you lose one function, you go through all those stages, and then, okay, you accept it, you go along, and then you know, another function of.
Exactly. Yeah, and these stages are not necessarily something that go right in order.
Right.
They can go back and forth and all around. But those are Elizabeth Kubler-Ross worked for years with people who were dying. And this is what she kind of surmised after all those years of the stages people can go through. You know, the denial, when you're first told that, you know, you have a cancer or whatever and you're dying. Okay, then you deny it, and then you get angry at it, and then you bargain, well, if you just give me a few more years, I'll do this. And then your depression, which is anger turned inward, and acceptance. And she said that you could really tell when people reached that stage of acceptance. There was a peacefulness about them. They were no longer fighting it. You know? You ever met people like that?
And I don't really think that all people go through those 5 stages either.
Right.
I mean, you can go from finding out you have cancer and jump to 5.
You can. You can.
I mean, yeah, so it doesn't apply to all people,
No,
I think.
no.
I think, you know, it's a general,
It's
I
a
think it's a
general.
general thing, but
A general statement that some fit some, that fit others.
I went through cancer and I didn't have those stages except for acceptance. I can't really, but like you said about pain, you just live with it and do whatever you need to do and don't focus on it, and, you know, it's acceptance, you know, and
It's the rare person that can jump right from the
Yeah.
announcement of whatever disease it is
Mhm.
to acceptance. I mean, usually we take some little journeys in between, ordinarily.
now, I was very scared, you know, I was
Okay.
very frightened and scared, but I never got angry. I never denied
Okay.
it. I didn't bargain,
Okay.
so it was like, now, maybe, I don't think I had any depression, but, you know, maybe at some point, maybe I did. But I just, from probably day one, I just accepted it, and I said, God is with me, and I'm gonna get through this.
Okay.
And they did expect me to die. They didn't expect me to live, and here I am 11 years later. So,
Right.
there is, sometimes people don't, you know,
No, they don't always fit this pattern. Who fits a pattern? Nobody fits
yeah,
a pattern.
yeah.
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 I've done both of those. I've done jumped from, well, the first time I had cancer, I probably did all those things. And part of my bargaining was, you know, I don't want to die until I can fulfill whatever purpose it is that I was
Right.
here for, and I didn't feel at that time that I had. And depression and all that. And then last October I got diagnosed with another cancer, and it's like, I wondered where those other stages were, and if they'll come up behind me, or, you know, but right now it's just like, it's what is, and I do what I have to do, and I don't know what's gonna happen. But there it is.
But you have that faith.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting when I came out of the doctor's office. I said, this is not what I had hoped for. I need a song. And I turned on the radio, and the song was, even if you don't part the waters or move the mountain that I wanted you to move, I'll trust you.
Okay.
You know, and so the mountain I wanted him to move was not for it to not be cancer, you know, but it didn't matter. I was going to trust anyway, and it was a beautiful song.
All right.
It gives me goosebumps every time I hear it now.
There you go. Yeah, we don't want to spend all night on this, but you had something else?
Well, it disturbs me sometimes when people may be going through acceptance and others perceive it as oh, he's given up.
Yeah.
I mean, the outcome that you see is similar, but what's going on internally can be completely different.
Right. Good point.
And when you don't you give up some things, not in a burdensome way, but when you do accept, you give up a,
Well, I guess I prefer to use the term let go rather than accept.
okay,
You know, let go, you know, of your need for control and all of this, you know. Yes, Shirley.
I think Dr. Ross was, at least all the studies that I've done with her work, was when someone you loved died,
Yeah.
and you go through those 5 stages.
Okay. So
Rather
not
than-
necessarily the patient, it's just, okay.
Rather than yourself,
That's a good
someone
point.
else, and like my husband, and losing him. You really do
Of course, yeah.
go through those stages.
And you can just imagine the people at that concert next to their husband or whoever was killed, and it just, wow, everything at once I can imagine, you know.
I can't imagine either.
I can't either, that just blows my mind. Okay, here's another question. Are you ready to surrender your physical life at this moment?
That's a good question.
When do you think you might be ready?
Later.
Mañana, right? That's the mañana approach, right? Right.
I'm ready, but not now.
That's right. That's right. Like that's the St. Augustine approach. You know, yeah. He was living quite the life and was called to conversion, and he said, "Well, I'm ready to accept you, Lord, but a little later, not now." You know? So he still wanted to have a little fun there. Okay. So, anybody want to respond? What age would you imagine is an appropriate age to pass on? That's such a word, appropriate. How do you even put an appropriate word there? What kind of control would you like to have on the circumstances of your time? Yeah.
That happened to me last June, and I could feel it coming, and my friend was a nurse, and I said, Mary, I'm gonna die, I can feel it, I'm not gonna make it. And I did, and then they got me
You
back.
did what?
Died.
You did? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
And after about 2 minutes, they got me back again. This is at the Hohenstein Center, which is like heaven itself. And then, but I wasn't ready because I felt, I won't go on too much, but there was like a darkness there. And I thought, that's not, I don't want to die like that. I don't want that darkness. And I felt like if I could just live a little longer, there would be light. That's just how I felt. I felt like I wasn't ready and that I had to live until Christ brought more light into me. And and so then I lost a lot of memory. But so what age you imagine? I can't even imagine age anymore. I forget what it is. No, I'm not kidding. But then with the control, what happened was when I came out of it, I found myself praying as much as I could because I wanted that light. And I thought if I can get that level of light where I felt like at that point I could die, it doesn't have to be total ahas or like the saints have or anything like that. But it was for me. I could feel it. And then, and so I kept praying about it, not urgently, but just like it belonged to me. And then, like maybe 3 or 4 days ago, it came, and it made me really happy. And it's not perfect or anything like that, but it's just what I needed, and so I could die now anytime.
Wow. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Maggie. I guess my own story might be that the time, I may have shared this before, but about 1972, I think it was. I was in St. Louis. I was in charge of an inner city African-American parish. Very poor. The Sunday collection was about $25 a week. We were subsidized by the archdiocese, and broken into literally every other week. Broken into, just some kind of robbery or something. I mean, not an assault, but just taking stuff, breaking in and stealing. And then one day I just come back from a trip, and I was with my staff. We were having a glass of wine or whatever, and all of a sudden these three guys with masks on, they put sweaters over their faces, and they came in with 2 shotguns and a pistol and said, "On the floor."
Oh.
And I thought, well, first I had been talking with some of the kids before about doing a whole movie. I thought, well, this is bad timing, you know. But then I was thinking, the door was locked. How'd you get in? So I don't. Anyway, I found out soon enough they were not kidding. So I got down on the floor, and they pulled my wallet out, and they were kicking my little dog around. I had a little poodle. So I grabbed the dog to hold it so it wouldn't get killed. And they said, "Where's your gun?" I said, "I don't have a gun. I don't believe in guns." "We know you've got a gun." Because the previous pastor walked around with a pistol in his cassock and had a nervous breakdown and became an alcoholic. It was just one of those guys. No one wanted to go there. It was the armpit of the whole archdiocese. Nobody wanted to go there. And they asked me, I said, "Yes, I'll go." Yes, I'll go. And so there I am, lying there, and I feel the nuzzle of a shotgun at the back of my skull. And I thought, any second, I am going to be right before the pearly gates, all right? And I cannot explain it, but I had a peace that surpasses all understanding. I was not anxious, I was not afraid, I was willing. I wasn't going to help him pull the trigger, but I did not feel fear. And that was 72 to now is what? Quite a few years ago, right? And how much?
I think 46 or
47, something like that, 40, anyway, a long time ago. So to this day, I'm grateful for that because I was at the door and I did not feel fear.
So what happened?
He pulled the trigger.
This is the reincarnation.
We're his angels. He's in heaven now.
You want to know the rest of the
Obviously,
story?
they did not pull the trigger. They left. I could hear them upstairs taking the TV and all that kind of stuff. And as soon as they left, they pulled the. This was the day when before cell phones, and so they pulled the phone out of the wall, like in the movies, you know. So you can't call the police, right? And so then they left, and I got up and we all of us pushed the file cabinet against the door so they couldn't get back in. And I yelled out the window, "Help, please, call the police, help." And different people walking by just kind of looked at me like, "Oh, you must be drunk," you know. And so finally, after about a half hour, I didn't hear anything more. So we pulled the file cabinet back, and I pushed my dog out. I love my dog, but I was going to say, we're going to see if there's anybody else. And anyway, they were gone. Made the front page of the largest paper in St. Louis. Anyway, it was. I don't think they ever caught him.
How long did you stay after that?
Oh, I stayed another year or so.
Did you ask him about the 3 boys that, in other words, how did they get in?
I still don't know.
But so it must have been a key.
You know, they might have had a key. But I'd also remember going through the parking lot one time and heard a bullet go by my ear.
Oh,
Wow.
You know? And another time, a guy that was off his meds was chasing me, and I barely got in my office and shut the door while he was chasing me. And it was, thank God, one of those doors that locks when it shuts. Otherwise, I might not be here yet. But I love those 3 years. I can't explain it. I can't explain it. But anyway.
So after that happened, were you really shook up?
No, not that much. No.
Because he had the peace.
Yeah.
I had that gift of facing death and not being afraid. What greater gift can you have?
Right.
Oh. Anyway, we can go and discuss this more in the small groups, okay? Scripture references. Who's going to read the first scripture reference first? Okay. Go ahead, Annette. Yeah.
Jesus said to his disciples, "Amen, amen, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his or her life in this world will preserve it for eternal life."
Okay. John 12. Okay. It's a powerful, powerful paragraph from John. And it really talks to this idea of diminishment and death. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies. Unless, that's the big word, unless. It remains just a grain of wheat. There's something about death that is transformational. That's what this is saying. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. And doesn't go into what that fruit is, but whoever loves his or her life loses it. And whoever hates his or her life in this world will preserve it for eternal life.
Is he also speaking of like a change of heart or metanoia? It could mean a lot of things.
Okay, let's look. Whoever loves their life loses it. Loses what?
He's talking about in this world. He says, if you hate your life in this world, which implies if you love your life in this world. And I think it's kind of like if you value being here more than you value that presence, then you won't produce, you won't bring fruit.
Okay.
So.
All right, that transformation, right? Okay, so in a sense we could say whoever loves their life loses it. Loses not necessarily your physical life, but loses that illusion that you're separate from God. And that's the ultimate illusion. And that's what the mystics mean by ego. It's the illusion that you're separate from God. And we're not. But that's the great illusion. That we somehow or another have to get back to God and work up to God and get God to love us and all that. And it's not true. We could not be loved by God any more than at this moment. So I'm going to go into that a little more. Yeah.
I also think it means that, so God in the beginning, in creation, gave us everything, and continues to give us everything. And if we, it seems to me that when we accept those things that are given to us as gifts, I don't know, I'm not sure how to put this. If we hole up into our houses and don't share our lives with other people, it's just it's just like you're just you living whatever this existence is. But when you go out into the world, and interact with people, there is a sharing and a giving up, but you're also receiving. And it seems to me that if you're trying to hold on to whatever you imagine this little life of yours is, you're going to end up just that hard grain. But if you let yourself be put into the earth and transformed and lose that shell, you become so much more when you let God work through you. And we actually, in Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, use this to teach the children about Jesus' death. And we plant a seed and we pull it up after it's sprouted and show that the seed it's been transformed, that word, into something else. That it's not totally gone, there's still that shell, but it's become something more. And then, eventually you show them a stalk that has all this other stuff on it. So it's like, it's just this life that's become more. Otherwise, you just, it just remains a grain.
Right.
And there's nothing to it. And it seems though that in our giving, we receive.
Exactly.
It's a very odd
So we
paradox.
don't own things of the world. They're gifts to us that we need to
We
use
don't-
those gifts for other purposes.
We don't own any, we don't even own our own breath. Every breath is a gift, Yes, Ray.
Maybe I have too literal a translation of this, but if a grain of wheat dies and bears fruit and effectively ceases to exist, okay, but then it will continue on through the fruit it bears and live forever, okay? Now, is it saying that we're like the grain, that when we die, that we will cease to exist as a distinct entity, like a drop of water dropping into the ocean?
Right.
Is that,
Okay.
am I right about that? That seems a
The one that go into that is this man right here, Eckhart, because he speaks to that. I was just reading it. He's got some great. Let me just show you a little piece he says, okay? He talks about taking a piece of wood and throwing it into the ocean. Still, the wood is only united, but not one. Okay? But it's not so with the soul, which is one with God and not united. Wherever God is, there is the soul, and where the soul is, there is God. This is a direct quote from Meister Eckhart. So he makes a distinction between being united and being one. He's saying we're one with God, but we're not united with God. And I think what he's saying is that the same thing we also say, we're not God, but we're not other than God either. And this is the paradox. You have to take your head and shake it up and put it back on. You can't understand it. It doesn't make literal sense. It only becomes truth for us in deep prayer. There's just some things this is the prayer dimension is the going down into the earth and dying. Dying to that sense of separateness. Prayer is what unites us. And it's a dying to the illusion that we're separate. And so it's all about unity and oneness. But I think what he says, when the soul is one with God, and this is already a very important qualification, there is no distinction. This, I believe, is the key to Eckhart's mysticism. We are not guaranteed one with God by virtue of our soul, for our freedom can thwart the soul's becoming one by not cooperating with grace. However, when the soul is one with God, all distinction between God and soul ceases, for they are not united but are in fact one. They are intellectually indistinguishable. Clearly, such a teaching is theologically possible, but in this life it is difficult in its ambiguity. That's an understatement, huh? So, if you want to wrestle with oneness and being united, and go to Eckhart, you'll have all you want.
Didn't he teach a week-long class at the Dominican Center about 5 years ago? Does he
Michael
still-
Dimkovich?
Yeah.
He's a Dominican priest, another educator, retreat director. He's currently director of Dominican Ecclesial Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
I think he teaches that now and then, I think
He could have been, I know there was someone up here at Aquinas. I was out of the state. I would have loved to. I would have gone. He had a session on Meister Eckhart. I would have loved to have done that. But anyway, that's a good point. But he's down in Albuquerque. I'm going down to Albuquerque in about 2.5 weeks for a 4-day, 3.5-4-day conference on eldering with Richard Rohr, right? And his teachers. And it's all about older men mentoring younger men. And it's part of the Illumin Institute of Men's Spirituality that Rohr started 35 years ago. And so we're going to we're asked, I just got the email yesterday asking us to bring our drums. We would be drumming and so forth. I'm not sure all what this is gonna be, but it's gonna be a lot about men's work. Okay? I'll tell you more next time when I come back.
You need your golf clubs too then.
Yeah, right, okay. Okay, who's reading the second one here?
I'll read it.
Okay, Joey.
None of us lives for oneself, and no one dies for oneself. For if we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So then, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's.
Okay. That could
That's
take
well
some,
said.
take some chewing up too, huh? It's all about connectedness and separateness and unity, and it's very Johannine too. It's very much like John. John is the great mystical evangelist, and I think Paul is the great writer of the epistles that's so mystical. Anyway, so what happens after we die? Physical death. There's no heartbeat, no breathing. Spiritual. Best term for dying spiritually, I believe, is transformation. Now, there's kind of different things. As Rohr says, there's information, formation, and transformation. Information is what we usually get stuck with. We just got to get more information, more theology, more this and that, and just fill our minds with all these books and courses and classes, and that's going to do it, right? We just get enough information, we'll be all set. That's what on the Enneagram, that's the number 5. They can never get enough information. Never. I have a good friend, my best friend is the 5. And he is a sponge for any kind of information. Okay, the next one is formation, which is the development of the will. Okay? Strong, moral. And then those two are not enough. It's spiritual transformation. And that involves seeing everything in a different way. That's what contemplation means. Seeing things in a different way, a totally different way. It involves primarily letting go, letting ourselves be unconditionally loved and tenderly held by our all-loving God forever and ever. And we might add what Rohr says, and for absolutely no reason whatsoever on God's part. God loves us for no reason whatsoever. Why is that?
We're his children.
That's a reason.
He created us.
That's a reason.
There are no conditions.
There are no conditions. There are no reasons that God is love. So we don't know anyone that is love. We know people that do love every now and then when they feel like it or whatever. But love, when your nature, your DNA is love, then reasons are irrelevant. You just love, Something like a parent loving their children. It's like, like you said, well, I love you because you're my children, okay?
Love for the sake of love.
Pardon? Love for
the sake of love.
Exactly. One of my favorite quotations from Louis Evely, and that wonderful book, That Man Is You, one of my favorite classics. That Man Is You. You remember where that quotation was taken from? That Man Is You? What part in the Bible was that from?
David? Was it David? Nathan and David?
Right. Nathan came to him and told about this guy who was very wealthy and had a lot of sheep, and this visitor came, and instead of killing his own sheep for the visitor, he took the only sheep that his neighbor had and killed it. And King David said, "That man must die. He took that only man's sheep and he's going to pay for it." And Nathan said, "That man is you." Because he had taken the wife of Uriah, Okay. Right? And put Uriah out in the front line so he'd be killed. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, he says, we don't gain heaven, we get used to it. That's one of those things you can just say over and over and over. You don't gain heaven, you get used to it. I'm convinced of that. I think that it's the truest thing, one of the truest things I've ever heard. That's what our lives are, getting used to heaven. But then we need to translate what heaven is. It's not something out there. It's not something in the future. It's right here and right now. It's not a reward. I think we really want to get mystical. We realize that the scriptures are telling us, from St. Paul and so many other ways, there are no such things with God as rewards and punishments. A lot of people, well, what do you mean? No, think about it. A reward is something you have earned. You can't even pronounce the name of Jesus on your own. It's all gift. It's all gift. So there's no such thing as a reward. You know? And punishment, God is not going to punish us. God just loves us in a change. We're going to get into more of that with the whole idea of judgment. What does that mean?
So the sooner we get this, the more time we are in heaven.
Yes.
What's
The
that?
more awareness we have.
The
The
sooner
more
we get
awareness.
all this.
That's right.
Yeah.
The more awareness we have, the more you live without your whole crime and punishment thing. You're good, you get rewarded. Bad, you get punished. That's not news. That's not good news. That's the news of everyday life. That's not the good news of the gospel. And churches, all churches, not just Catholics, but all churches, have used this as the carrot at the end of the stick. Okay, you mind your P's and Q's and you're going to get rewarded. You be a good boy and you'll get your cookie or whatever it is, right? That's not gospel. Sorry. But it makes it good for good crowd control, you might say.
Church attendance and participation, it's good for that.
Oh, exactly. Oh, you better believe it. You don't go to church? Uh-huh. Right?
It's attendance,
Attendance.
not necessarily participation.
Attendance, right, you got it.
It's,
Yes, Ray.
This makes it sound like this transformation is an entirely passive process on my part. I just let go and allow myself to be loved by God.
Right.
For some reason, I see it as more of a collaborative process.
Right.
I guess that's my question.
Right. Well, I would say that it is 99.9999% passive, okay? There is one tiny bit that represents our saying yes.
Yep, our free will.
And God, that's free will, and God needs that, yes. That's what I call the parable of the mustard seed. It's the tiniest of seeds, okay? God needs that, but even that is gift. We couldn't do that without God. But, you know, it has to be God waiting for us to give that little 0.001% yes. But otherwise, we'd have, our ego would just know no bounds. We could, well, Lord, look, when I was on earth, I built churches and I built homes for the poor and I visited the sick and, you know, just please, you're busy. Give me my reserved seat. Let's get over with it, you know. It's that mentality, and that's the proud. Huh? Like I've told you before, people come in confession, oh, Father, I was proud 8 times. And I say, excuse me?
9 times.
You realize, no,
10.
no, you realize you have
Well-
nothing to be proud of, don't you? That's what I do. I say to them. Your jaw just drops, you know. They were proud that they could confess that, you know. Well, I was proud 7 times. All right. Well, I'm sorry. You realize you don't have anything to be proud of, don't you? It's all God, you know. So you're not suffering from pride. You're suffering from illusion. All right.
But it would seem I want to be actively involved in seeking Him in learning about him and things like that. I mean, that seems
But
like
that's not you. That's
It's not.
God within you hungering for God. In my opinion, okay?
It's also not about doing something good because you're gonna get a reward. It's
That's
like
right.
if you have love and experience God's love, you want to serve others
Right.
because, but it comes from God through you into,
That's right.
It's
all
not-
participation. Love loves,
Yes.
okay? There's no reward for it, and God certainly does not punish it. You cannot fall in love with someone who's going to punish you and send you to hell for all eternity. I don't care what you say. You just can't. You can go through the rituals and do all the P's and Q's and everything else, but if you're not in love, you miss the boat. You know? So God just loves us in the change. I'm going to get into that more when we get into punishment. We're not going to have much time, but anyway. Transformation involves getting used to letting go. Letting go is of what? Primarily illusion. The illusion that we're separate from God, that God can ever not love us. God cannot not love us. It's impossible because God's nature is love. God cannot go against God's nature. Even God cannot do that. The illusion that we can do anything to get God to love us. God already does. The illusion that there will be rewards and punishments. I think this is crucial if we're going to grow up spiritually. Otherwise, we are ego involved, rewards and punishment, fear and pride, okay? And that's not the dying that God calls us to do. Okay, let's go with this. What really happens, the near-death experiences, we alluded to this with Maggie. And a lot of speculation about that. About 30 years old people are reported having had experiences when they in full awareness leave their physical body and enter another world. We've all read about it, okay? Common characteristics of NDEs, they can give exact details. One woman said she saw her family that night and she could see what they were eating and where they were sitting and everything else, and then exactly what it was. Someone else said that they saw a tennis shoe on the hospital roof. Clear as a bell, it was red and all this kind of stuff. Later turned out there was one right there. And nobody could see it, but when they checked it, what these kind of things, you know. And they're always talking about clinical death, not biological death. What's the difference?
Well, clinical death, wouldn't that be when all the signs are gone? You're breathing, your heart rate, blah, 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 but your body is still, I mean, obviously your body's still alive in some way, because how could you come back to a dead body? I mean, so all of the I'm losing, I can't even think about.
All of the signs of
All the
life.
signs, yeah, and all the machines are showing that you're
Right.
dead.
Okay. So biological death, this is what the experts are saying, is that which is time-based. Okay? Someone does not come back after a week and talk about their near-death experience. Kelly's getting a kick out of that. Yeah, so it's like, it's a lot of different, near-death experience is near. It's not far away, it's near. A lot of things about going through a tunnel and seeing the light and so forth. Possible explanations, hallucinations induced by medication, previous encounters long forgotten, our imagination, etc. Yes.
That 90 minutes in heaven, I was in healthcare and I do not understand how you could be clinically dead and be resurrected after 90 minutes. And I just have to shrug my shoulders and say, I don't need to understand.
I'm not aware of this, I haven't read this book, but there is a book called 90 Minutes.
And in 90 minutes in heaven, and I met the man who experienced that.
Is that right? Wow.
He was killed in an auto accident.
There's some amazing things there that no one can truly explain.
And we'll never understand,
No.
but I can't say it didn't happen.
No.
Well, we have a witness right here with us tonight.
That's right.
I didn't have a near-death experience, though I died, and they told me I was dead for 2 minutes, but I don't remember anything like, I didn't have any of that.
Oh,
No.
okay, yeah.
It was more like I fainted or something.
Anybody else have any of those that you want to talk about? No? All right.
So what is the difference then between clinical death and biological death?
It's time.
Okay.
You know, it's biological death is so much down the road that there's no way that
Okay.
it would resurrect.
Biological death is when you don't come back.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. It's a far death experience, not a near death. Oh my gosh, I'm just quoting something. All right. I'm just quoting something. But many say that naturalistic explanations cannot satisfactorily explain the events that occur in near-death experiences. We could spend a whole class on that. But just took me, the whole title is What Happens After Death, so I thought this was important to include that, okay? The need to know now about what happens after death. There is almost a compulsion for people to think about what happens and what it's going to be like, and we want to know, and so where do this almost compulsion come from? These are the things that I just thought of myself. Natural inclination to take care of oneself now and in the future. To have more control. Anybody here like to have control of their lives? And control of other people's lives? No fair with spouses raising their fear of unknown and fear of a punishing God. This is probably the number one issue in religion, is what is your image of God? That colors everything. If your image of God is a vengeful, punishing God, your whole life will reflect that. If your image of God is loving and kind and forgiving, and it's going to be different. To pursue pleasure and avoid sorrow. We want to be on this side of the fire, right? We just have all these images of fire. You stop to think about it. They're all metaphors, okay? Once the spirit leaves the body cannot be affected by fire. There's just nothing there you're not there anymore, okay? So it's a metaphor of punishment, okay? I tell you, I've got some books I'm going to recommend to you that are just absolutely dynamic about this whole business of punishment and fire and hell. Okay. Now, I like this poem. Who's going to read this for us? I walked a mile.
I will.
All right.
I walked a mile with pleasure. She chatted all the way, but left me none the wiser for all she had to say. You want me to go on?
Yeah.
I walked a mile with sorrow, and ne'er a word said she. But oh, the things I learned from her when sorrow walked with me.
I like that, huh?
I say something about that.
Huh?
I remember when I was about, I don't know, maybe 16 or something, 17, my life was really good and really simple. It was, we lived in the country and everything was just lovely, 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 and I was bored to death. I just longed for something more, and I felt really, really shallow. And I remember asking God if I could experience the misery that made people deep.
Oh, okay.
People what?
That made people deep, because the people that fascinated me the most were people that had come through troubles. But my parents gave me this beautiful life up until then anyway, and then all of a sudden all broke loose. And he answered my prayer.
Be careful of what you wish for, right?
And then, so that's really true.
All right.
It's like Richard Rohr says, transformation comes after deep sorrow or deep prayer.
Basically the two things that bring about transformation is deep pain and deep love. Okay, and part of that's prayer. Okay, but because what are those two things? Those are the two things that can destabilize our ego. When someone loves you, and you really can't explain why, you just, you know, it's like, wow, I need to know why, but there's no reason why. And then great pain, a lot of times there's no explanation for that. The loss of a loved one, you know, it destabilizes that ego, that self that wants to be in control, that wants to call the shots, that wants to know why. And the great mystic Meister Eckhart wrote that beautiful treatise, How to Live Without a Why. You might Google that and just see what they say about Meister Eckhart's treatise on how to live without a why. Okay. Why? Why? Because I said so. That's why. Different perspective. Atheists believe that at death one ceases to exist. I didn't put down agnostic, but they would say they just don't know. Agnosco means I don't know in Latin. Eastern and new religions, a pantheistic worldview that one goes through an endless cycle of reincarnation, rebirthing, until the cycle is broken and the person becomes one with the divine. Okay, a lot of religions believe in this reincarnation. I was down in the Bahamas in May to give that talk on Christian mysticism, and I was the only Christian presenter. The other 5 were Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, and American Indian grandmother, and myself representing 1.5 billion Catholics, no, Christians, all right? Oh, I tell you, that was a challenging experience. But anyway, so many of them were talking about reincarnation. It's just keep being born all over again. You know? It's not the teaching of Christianity. All right. Animistic or tribal religions, after death the human soul remains on the earth or travels to join the departed spirits of the ancestors in the underworld, also called the realm of the shadows. Islam, at the end of history, God will judge the works of all, the good into paradise and the wicked into hell. And of course, they have also saying about the men will have all these beautiful women and all this kind of stuff. Doesn't say about the women who stepped on the duck, does it? All right. Christianity, what do you as a Christian think happens after death?
I think our bodies go back to dust and our soul goes with God if we acknowledge His presence in our being. Because God is with people that don't believe in God. He's there, but they don't acknowledge Him. So if you acknowledge Him, I think as Christians, our soul would go to heaven.
Can I just add one thing? I think language is crucial, okay? Look at all the language we have in our vocabulary for faith. And I think one of the ones we use most of all is this one. Believe. The old thing, do you believe, Reminds me of that joke of the guy was baptizing in the river and this guy walks by and he says, hey, come on over here, you want to be baptized? Oh, okay. So he puts him down. After a while he comes up and says, do you believe? And he says, well, I don't know. He holds him down for a longer time, brings him up. Do you believe? He says, no. For the next time, a really long time. And he brings him up. Do you believe? He says, I believe you're going to drown me. So it's this believing is like, you can, a lot of people use it in terms of think. I believe in global warming. I think that global warming is true, whatever it is. It's kind of like an equal sign, believe. Believe for a lot of people is an intellectual assent to truth. That's what you say, I believe. Truth, or TH, all right? Okay, so, but this is not the original biblical understanding of believe. Believe in the biblical understanding is to connect, to be one with. Okay? Otherwise, if it was associated with intellect, what about all the people that are intellectually handicapped? You know? How are they going to believe? You know, they don't even, they can't understand language, so to speak. So believing is a commitment of love. It's a connection of love. We search for metaphors to go to good, but when Jesus asked the disciples, "Do you believe me?" He's not saying, "Do you believe in my doctrines? Do you believe in what I'm teaching?" He's saying, "Are you with me? Are you connected with me? Are we together on this?" Right? Does that make sense? See, that's so different than what we usually think in terms of your beliefs. That's your creedal system that we're talking about. But this is much more relational. And I think that's the whole essence of all revelation is relation.
Does it imply engagement?
Engagement?
Engagement, an active participation.
It asks for connection. Okay? It calls forth a response. This is what conversion means, okay? Conversion, conversio. Versio means to turn. Conversion, to turn around. Repent, the same thing. Means to have a whole new about face. Okay? So it calls for a response. But it's not saying that, okay, if you don't respond, I won't love you. There's no conditions on God's love. Yeah.
When you talk about connection, I think too, I would think about when we die, okay, we talk about this communion of saints. We are part of that connection here, and we're even more so there without our bodies. And more, can you be more connected? Or can you just be in a more awareness of your connection with others and with God and with all of creation?
That's a good question. Is there a stable wholeness to the word connection? Are there gradations in it? Is there a cycle to it?
But isn't it, I think, well, especially women, but like a lot of guys do this too, it's like we have this deep knowing.
Okay, intuition, you want to call it?
I think of intuition as a little lighter than the knowing, but yeah.
Okay, all right. It's analogous, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it a brighter light? Is it more closer to the bright light? Is it, more light? Is it, I don't know.
Well, for me, I think it's all a matter of vulnerability and capacity. What's your capacity to receive all the love that God wants you to have?
Say that again, please.
It's a matter of vulnerability, being open.
What it?
Pardon?
It, you said it is about, what is about?
Our capacity.
This sense of the brightness, or whatever you want to call it, this growing in in this connection with God, it's not what we do, it's our going down, letting go, the dying, the death, to that self that is in competition with God, and therefore does not have room for God, and there has no capacity for God. So as we grow in quote, quote, holiness, which I also think needs to be defined because it's all connected with the whole root word of wholeness, holiness and wholeness. And that means connection, that means union. It's all about union and love and ability to be able to receive it and not try to make it happen. Like Mary, when the angel appeared to Mary, she said, "Be it done to me." She did not say, "Well, you got the right lady here. I can do it. Anybody can do it. I can do it. Bring it on." Okay? That's the ego. No, she said, "Be it done to me. You're going to do it. I'm going to receive it." And Jesus became flesh. The key right there. And what have we done? We have gone against Luther and his whole myth of justification. The Catholic Church said, no, it's faith and good works, right? And now the Pope has come out and said, we made a mistake. Luther was right. Okay? Just recently came out and said that. I mean, it is all about faith. And not faith in the sense of my creedal beliefs. It's faith in terms of connectedness and union. Mystical union. So it's nothing you can do about it. You can't earn it, you can't deserve it, you can't achieve it, you can't work for it. You receive it. And your whole response is gratitude, not pride. That makes sense?
Yes.
It's lovely.
All right, well, I'm just so enmeshed with this, reading all this, and my contemplation every day, I get so, these what do you call it, breakthroughs you might happen, so that I read all these things that about the traditional things. It just doesn't make any sense, and I just want to rewrite the whole thing, Like, okay, this ex opere operato, ex opere operatus. This is what we learned in theology, back 50 years ago. A Latin word, ex opere operato, is a Latin expression meaning by the work worked. By the work worked. It refers to the fact that the sacraments confer grace when the sign is validly effected, not as the result of activity on the part of the recipient, but by the power and promise of God. My friends, that is pure philosophical jargon. Okay? I mean, I don't identify with it. Do you identify with that statement? What that is saying is that it's not you, it's God. But they have, a whole paragraph to say it. And then ex opere operantis is the other half of that, the other side of that coin, a term mainly applied to the good dispositions with which a sacrament is received, to distinguish it from the ex opere operato, which is the built-in efficacy of a sacrament properly conferred. Oh, that's horrible language, properly conferred. What does that mean? But it may refer to any subjective factor that at least partially determines the amount of grace obtained by a person who performs some act of piety. Amount of grace, that's a contradiction in terms. You don't go to the store and say, I want a pint of grace and throw in a quart of, whatever, It's not quantitative. Thus, in the use of sacramentals or in the gaining of indulgences, God forbid, the blessings received depend largely on the faith and love of God with which a sacramental is employed, or an indulgence, prayer, or good work is performed. This is what we were filled with 4 years of theology when I was going to seminary in 1961 to 65. It's exactly this. And what have I had to do? Unlearn it and translate it. Because that's one reason why, so many people, few people have integrated the teaching of the gospel. It's been in terms of this language. Am I exaggerating, or does this make sense?
Makes sense.
This all here is transactional. You do this, you get that. You get this amount of grace, you have to work for it. You get the sacramental, that's all transactional. Tit for tat, right? Everything else is transformational. What a difference, huh?
And the priest has to say the right words with the right gestures
Oh,
at
I
the
know.
right time for it
And
to
in the
be
right Latin, too.
properly conferred.
You have to use the right Latin translation, for God's sake. Okay.
Well, that's all God speaks.
I know. But there you go. John 3:17. Let's read that together. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him may not die, but may have eternal life. God did not send the world in the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. Oh my gosh. Does that say it all? We don't need these two things here. I'm going to talk at another time on this series on heaven and hell, okay? There's just too much to cover at this time, so this will be to be continued, all right? But there's some great
There's
stuff.
more after death?
Fasten your seatbelt, Joe.
We don't get to that part, okay.
Okay. If you really want to read something really good theology, this is a little book by a former Trappist priest, John Jacob Raoub. Who told you that you were naked? Freedom from judgment, guilt, and fear of punishment. Terrific little book. It's very small.
What's that? Freedom from?
Freedom from judgment, guilt, and fear of punishment. Who told you that you were naked? Where is that from in the scriptures?
Genesis.
In Genesis, of course. Beautiful book. Oh my gosh. Another one that's terrific is Good Goats, Healing Our Image of God, by Dennis Lynn, Sheila Fabricant Lynn, and Matthew Lynn. Dennis and Matthew are brothers, and I think Matthew married Sheila, okay? So now they have this trinity that goes around giving all these talks. I went to one of their talks in Connecticut or someplace many years ago. And I got there to the retreat house the day early, and they were going to have a talk on Saturday morning and early morning. And so they were late getting in. I was the only one there. They woke me up to get in. All right, the door was locked. All right. They also wrote this beautiful book, Understanding Difficult Scriptures in a Healing Way. They're on the sheet there, okay? But oh my gosh, do they have great stuff. I'll go into more of this when we go into heaven and hell. Okay? So, I'm afraid that we're kind of running out of time. I used a lot of stuff from this. I checked a lot of things on Catechism of the Catholic Church, this big book that's got everything we're supposed to believe in here. And it's really some great things in terms of judgment. Judgment not so much as separating, but as healing and as revealing. Okay? So, lots of good stuff out there, you guys. It's exciting, huh? So I'm just glad to be on this journey, and as this opening story said, we're not leaving you in darkness, we're leaving you searching for the light, and we're all searching together.
Was there one more slide?
Oh, is there one more?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There's one more on the paper.
Two more.
Oh. Okay, this is from 1051 and 1054 are from this book, the Catechism, okay? You can read those on your own, Purgatory and so on. We'll get more into that when we get into heaven and hell. Oh, one more, okay. Oh, you're getting your money's worth already?
You can't go home yet.
All right. question, how does the image of Christ as the judge resonate with the image of Jesus as given in the Gospels and epistles? Keep in mind that we can only grasp the essence of Jesus' message by considering the whole of Scripture, not just little parts taken out of context, okay? So that's what we get into a lot of mistakes. Oh, well, this Matthew 3, Luke 4, and you get this spiritual duel, of Scripture. And Scripture was never meant to be taken that way. It's the whole book. What does it say? And if something is taken out of context and doesn't resonate with the whole message, don't pay any attention to it.
What about the Nicene Creed? Because that it makes you wonder from whence he shall come to.
Judge, well, there you go. We're going to go into that in terms of what judgment means, all right? I think we have limited it to that sense of I'm the judge and I'm going to condemn you or whatever, and that's not the scriptural meaning. I'm convinced.
They're going to Florida. They won't be here.
Oh, they won't be here? Oh my God, all right.
But you can watch it live stream, which is what I'm doing, and then we convert it to video on demand so you can watch it later.
That's right.
Yeah. Just go to our website,
Send me your website.
www.catholicinformationscenter.org.
Kelly's not going to let you get away that easy, all right?
It's a loving judgment.
I love it. But yeah, it really,
It's not a good word.
judgment just doesn't fit. It doesn't compute with Jesus. Jesus did not judge. They asked him to judge the woman caught in adultery. He refused. Okay. We're going to need to pray and close up shop, all right? And originally intended to break up in small groups, but what do they say about the road to hell is paved with city hedges?
We are a small group.
I know, that's true. Last month we had 31, so it was hard. Okay. So, let's just take a moment of silence. Loving God, deeply within us, we pray that we may recognize our breath is your breath, our lives is your life, our love is your love. We pray that we may stand under what you've come to share with us, so that it might truly make your words real. I have come that you may have life